Hello, everyone. Well, today I want to talk briefly about two somewhat famous phrases from Marshal McLuhan. I guess he is a theorist, known as a theorist and a philosopher, but this is what the most people, because I've heard this phrase before, and this is the phrase: the medium is the message. And then the other phrase that we hear, but now we're kind of living it in a way. I guess both. So here's the other phrase: the global village. So both, because this is an old phrase. I think it's a few decades old by my guesstimates, and so we definitely seem to see how that notion carried a lot of weight, and I guess we, in our modernity, the pace that our technology has improved, right? I guess we can kind of see how that rings a bell when you hear the phrase, the medium is the message, right? And emphasis on the medium, right? And what is the medium and how has it changed just within one or two, say even three generations, right? From the telegram. Well, let me back up. Printing press, telegram, radio, phone, the internet, and the smartphones, the apps, and now it's these new large language models, AI, and whatnot. And so now there's he also did said another phrase, and it goes something like this: that we shape our tools, and shortly thereafter, the tools shape us. It is October. Halloween is around the corner, and I didn't quite feel like putting on a straw hat, so I decided to go with a different hat today because, well, it's before you know it, people will be wearing costumes, and then there's that. What is a costume? And as far as in philosophy, right? People wear masks, and so, anyways, but I don't want to detour too much. So it is October, so there you are. The medium is a message. I want to pause there for a minute because I don't want to. So there's plenty of people talking about the new mediums and how they're bringing change, how the tools are now shaping us. So the message, what message exactly? Right? Depends on who you asked. You can ask the same question, you will get different guesses as far as what is what message and what is our message. What do we think is important? I guess that kind of goes on the notion of what is it that we worship, right? Atheist or not, believer or non-believer, we give our attention, our this word attention. With these new tools, we're beginning to lose our ability to focus our attention long enough, right? So what do we, by and large, month after month, what are we all about? Where's our attention? Where's our desires? When we start to daydream or plan, what is it that we are concerned about? What's in our hearts? What are we constantly thinking about? What do we yearn for? What do we worship? Right? Some people will say, well, no, I don't worship anything. I don't believe in anything. Well, what do you mean by worship? All right. And so the medium is a message. What is a message? So in my prior video, I mentioned in the Garden of Eden, right, is where the snake is introduced, and is the most cunning of the beasts in the field. And I also mentioned that the way that Eve ends up eating the apple is not because the snake tackles Eve and starts smacking her around, pins her down, and starts twisting her arm until, with enough force and pain and torment, says, okay, now are you going to eat the apple? That's not the way it went down. It was about a message. The cunning snake brings about this information, and Eve begins to question her reality, begins to question what God has said, and there's a choice to be made, and we all know how that story gets played out. But yes, very old story, and from the Jordan Peterson, the way he sees things, or at least the way he explains things, is, it's a archetype, it's right, that notion grounded on reality, and it plays out, right, in many levels. So what message are we receiving, and what do we question, right, as far as our trying to make sense of what reality is, or what are our options? Do we have agency, right? When Jordan Peterson was debating or going on tour with Sam, he was big contender. There is no free will, right? So, do we have agency? Grizz, he's always doing this messages as far as agency, the notion about agency, the notion about community, because we're not alone. Even so, beginning to use these tools, virtually not alone. He also mentions, right, PVC, player against player. Have you stopped to consider what that means? We do interact daily with people. We go throughout the world month after month, year after year, and we exchange ideas, notions, preferences, our experiences, our biases. Either we influence them, they influence us, or maybe it's both. We all influence each other, right? And even our tools, if you believe this McLuhan, our tools begin to shape us. And what message are we questioning? What is our reality founded on? What is our foundation built on? On my last video, I also referenced some book, The User Illusion, and it talks about a lot of things, and a lot I find interesting, because it's just how I've been rewiring myself in my journey of learning things that I don't know, and some things grasp my attention more than others. So I give attention to more subjects than others. Yes, I do understand I do have a biases. I also am aware that I have some blind spots. So all this is opinion based, and many people have mentioned that, and I've ran this left brain, right brain in many different conversations and textbooks, and they mentioned that the patient PS, where he was suffering from seizures, and they were taxing, and they were getting in the way of everyday living, so they decided to be bold and do something that normally they wouldn't, but what the heck, right? So they split his brain, the hemispheres, into two, and then you end up with, now that yielded a whole field of study into the left brain and the right brain, right? And I know that the corner mentions that the left brain, right brain, and so the two notions. So I'll simplify it. I can't retain all this information. so I can't really recall all of it. But so I made a few notes. So, and it is intuition versus analytical. So those two notions, and they reside in the two hemispheres. And because most of us, the majority of us, don't have a split brain, we can actually, once we understand, once we are aware that we have these two completely different worlds of viewing the world, different ways of seeing things, from the left to the right, from the supposedly top of masculine to the feminine. So intuition. So from what my guesstimate, my opinion, that intuition could be coming from a different place than analytical. In the usual illusion, they also mentioned the Potzl phenomenon, Potzl phenomenon, because I also mentioned the subliminal images, and this whole notion about let me see, let me find my notes here. Again, can't retain as much information as I would want, so maybe some notes will help. So here you go. It is about the let me find it here. Give me 1 second. Oh, there we go. I found it. The hitting of Cerber. Right? And the whole phenomenon, and the people have played this out and they've made different experiments, and so in some fields, and even I've even spoken to professionals, so I know that people are still utilizing hypnotism as a form of therapy. So in the user illusion, the hidden of Cerber is that if you are in the hypnotized world, so to speak, you see and hear, you sense other things, right, while hypnotized. Kind of like when you're in a dream world, you see, you taste, you might have conversations, you're chased, or you're stuck in a room full of snakes, right? Weird dreams, right? And you don't hear so you might have white noise, or you might, have your dog, maybe they're having dreams on their own, they make some noises. We used to have a dog, family dog, and we miss her very much. But anyways, we did not replace her. Some pets are not replaceable. Anyways, so we no longer hear the real world, the material world, and we're hearing the dream world. So under hypnotism, you kind of don't see with your eyes, you see with the different, I don't know where you see those things, but yes, because where I work, I do actually end up interacting, having conversations with psychiatrists, with psychologists, with social workers that do therapy, and I have spoken to some that actually do practice hypnotism as a form of therapy. So I know that is still utilized today. I know there's some people like, I don't believe in hypnotism, so back to where I started. The message, the medium is the message. The medium, the tools will shape us. We shape the tools, and then here we go. The tools are shaping us, and then we interact with each other. So we are giving and receiving each other messages, and like I said, I mentioned the subliminal. So messages that we don't see with the conscious. So they say, when you watch a video, when you watch a show, when you watch a movie, when you watch a commercial, so they run about 25 to 30 frames or pictures per second. you see them as continuous, but it's actually pictures, a lot of pictures. And it might be one which might have a subliminal message, or so the theory goes, right? And you can't see it. So this is where I connect the hypnotized world, where that, whatever sight that uses, maybe we'll call it the spirit, call it the psyche, call it the soul, whatever it is, that the dream world, it sees, but not with your eyes, right? That's why we see, you might be able to tell what you're wearing. Some people don't recall what they're wearing in their dreams, or you might remember a structure. If you had recurrent dreams, I've had some of those. So you see, but not with your eyes. So they say the theory is that you actually are able to see these subliminal images not with your sight, but with the other sight, whatever that is. And that is a theory. So like I said, maybe it is, maybe it's not. So now, there's also a notion about priming, and by a contextual cue. And then, so I'm going to back to where I started with the mediumist message. And then I'm like, what message? What is it that we're sharing with each other and morphing, and we influence towards this, towards that, and we keep on changing the way we see the world, the way we see reality-ish. So contextual cues were primed that can influence us, so they say. So then then it goes back to the notion of, in the garden, Eve, the idea, are you sure that that's what God said? Are you sure that you are going to die? Are you sure that maybe God is the one lying to you, right? The implication, right? Maybe he just doesn't want you to attain this knowledge of good and evil, right? That kind of notion where that idea, that thought, the phrase, the communication, whatever that is, right? That is what cascaded and evolved, and it created Eve to act and to question and to, right? But we are still doing that. We're still questioning, right? Did Christ really, right? The new modern Christian thinker, philosopher, they say they're Christians, but they're like, I don't believe in the resurrection, and they will do their very best to convince you that you should not trust and not believe in Christ and in the resurrection, right? Yeah, it's a metaphor, but not in the reality, right? They don't believe in, and they're super smart, I'll give them that, right? That they don't believe in the resurrection, and man, you better not believe in the resurrection either. That's what they're all about, and that's what they're all over that, right? And is that why maybe so priming and contextual clues and that influences, and is that maybe why people always use verses and they take them out of context to try to paint a picture that might be different? That's why I've received the advice long ago from my pastor that vision is 20/20, right? And in spiritual things, you should also imply that the 20/20 rule, where somebody gives you a verse, okay, let's see what it's all about. Go back 20 verses before, 20 verses after, to get the context, to see what it is. That way you, right? Because it'd be priming you into something different than what the text is supposed to be. And so there is a distinction between an illusion and a delusion, because in the Use Your Illusion book, they're mentioned about the illusions, about perception, geometric shapes, and how depth and how depth and field, then that can kind of give you an illusion. But I must say there's a difference between illusions and delusions. So I'll give you an example. Now this notion about, so if you are a young buck and you know nothing about the hippies, the movement, the Vietnam War, and kind of like they were gonna buck the establishment and the peace, right? Make love, not war, right? If you know nothing about the Roman numerals, you probably don't, you, right? If you haven't seen the movie V for Vendetta, so you're like, that's not V for Vendetta, right? If someone just, like somebody says, no, that's peace or pie, right? Maybe, right? But you say, how many fingers am I holding? Then if I say, okay, how many fingers am I holding, right? What is the answer? Your mind will already start going to different places, right? Maybe peace, maybe it's 4, maybe it's 2 Roman numerals, maybe all these, or maybe it's just 4. How many fingers am I holding? It's the same thing with this. How many fingers am I holding, right? Now, what if I was to ask, what is 2 plus 2, right? Or what is 2 plus 2, right? How many fingers am I holding? What if you said 5? Would that be considered an illusion or a delusion, or maybe not a delusion, not an illusion? What I'm saying is, yes, we are being influenced. We're in a global village, right? To quote McLuhan, the medium is a message, and the medium has morphed, has changed, has evolved, right? We went from the printing press, the telegram, radio, TV, video, the internet, large language models, the apps, the AI, open source models. So now all these companies are fighting for use mine, right? My subscription. So there's a lot of money involved. There's power of play. So we use the tools, we change the tools change us, and powerful players will use the tools to influence us, to change us, to manipulate us. Isn't that what advertisement is all about? To influence you, to have you change your mind. I know you've been using this product, but now how about you try this product, right? I mean, that's superficial. That's like, is that really of consequence? But at the end of the day, right, the notion of, is there free will? Is there agency? Is there such thing as dark arts as far as manipulation, perception, subliminal, where they take things out of context over and over again, and where they use the tools such as the media, such as shows, to bring about a different perception over and over and over and over the course of years, generation after generation. And I don't know how have those tools shaped us, right? I'm not saying I have the answers. I just have a bunch of questions. So the message, the medium, the whole concept of how Eve questioned and changed her, right? Because the question is, how come Eve didn't just go for the tree of life instead of the tree of right and wrong? And why was the tree of life all of a sudden off limits? And then again, we have Christ, and then the implication is that he is the new Adam. So the new Adam has the tree of life in a way, because there is that question. So not yesterday, my last video, which actually I think it was yesterday, I mentioned the whole concept of different perspectives, all millennial, premillennial, no millennium. It's all metaphors. This whole, whether the rapture is true, no pre-trib, no rapture, all that, different ideas. Again, context, out of context, the tools shaping us. We shape the tool shapes us again, we shape the the tool shapes us again. We interact, we share ideas, those ideas shape us, generation after generation. There is a concept of the spiritual, right? The powers and principalities in the spiritual realms. And there is a interesting story that involves fasting and prayer, where the apostles are not able to exorcise a demon out of an individual, and I guess Christ is like, like, you have little faith or something like that, and they asked him, why couldn't we? And the answer that's given is like, well, these demons only come out with prayer and fasting. Because I know that in some certain sections of Christianity, like Protestantism, the whole practice of fasting is not really like a thing, right? But Christ did say this about this spiritual notion, where only with prayer and fasting, and that involves faith. So again, in those times, Jesus had clarified, you heard it said, but I say, right? When he's talking about the Pharisees, he's like, there's a whole thing about the resurrection, and, they try to, so, because even though they study the scriptures, they don't believe in the resurrection, right? So certain spiritual things, some people are going to just believe certain things that others don't believe, right? Some don't believe in the spiritual realm, in the spiritual world. But prayer and fasting, you can't. So let's do this thought experiment. Let's play it out. When the apostles encountered this demon, they were unable to exorcise that demon. They're like, oh, but now we know. So now we have to pray and fast. Doesn't that have to be done beforehand? And don't you have to believe and understand the whole why that is important, why that even happens? Because fasting has to be done beforehand. And if you don't even think that there's anything to fasting, probably not going to do it. I'll give you another example. And I know that this has been mentioned in the corner before, but the bronze rod with the serpent in the Old Testament about Moses, and about the poisonous snakes biting people, and God did not take away the snakes. What he gave him was a bronze pole with the serpent. And all you had to do, if you believed, only those that believed will look upon the pole, and the poison wouldn't take them out. In science, that makes no sense, right? So you have to take. So there's a faith aspect. There's a realm where we don't quite understand, right? That's why some people, they're like, fasting, yeah, whatever, right? And other people do take, no, fasting is really important. Prayer is important. This is a concept that Christ said. He brought it into the conversation in dealing with very powerful demons, I might add. So, again, that's just my 2 cents. That's just my opinion. Like I said, that's all I'm going to say. Again, just my opinion. Some things have to be done ahead of time, but you're not going to do them if you don't believe they're worthwhile. If you don't have faith, you're not going to do certain things, right? Certain things are going to contradict science. That's just plain and simple. I mentioned that in the corner, one of those live streams, that the miracle of the withered hand, where Christ healed it. Like science people are like, no. You can't. Nerve that's dead, you can't just rebuild it in seconds, right? You can't just, bone doesn't grow instantly like that. Muscle doesn't grow instantly. Nerve endings doesn't. You can't just, right? Born blind, now you're blind, right? These things do contradict science. I get that. But the one that created science, before science even was right? In the beginning was the Word. How it all works, I don't know. I can't create a universe. I'm not going to pretend that I know. I'm never going to know. I'm okay with that. As good as we're going to get is knowing the knowledge of good and evil, right? Because of the fall, right? But what are we pursuing? What are we worshiping? What are we devoting our time and attention to, right? And just so you know, we're in this world, and that's how it is. And we have all these fancy equipment, all these useful tools, and we're shaping them, and they're shaping us, and we're talking with each other, and we're influencing us. And little by little, here we are. The conversation is still there, still the same notion. Did the Bible really say that? Did Christ really say that? Right? Is the resurrection real? Are the miracles real? And it is for us to decide, who are you going to trust? Are you going to trust the snake? Or are you going to trust God? Because it's the same concept, same deal. Eve, it's the same thing. Nothing's new under the sun. Same thing. Are you going to trust the snake? Because the snake is the most cunning out of all the beasts of the field. Right? I'm not saying it's stupid. It never has been stupid. But again, who are you going to trust? It's the same. It's the same thing. Nothing has changed. Right? The pole's there. In the end, they kind of warped the meaning of that, right? Yes, I understand that. I get it. But the concept of you're going to do it because you believe, not because science makes it. You can't make. There's intuition versus analytical, and those live in two different hemispheres, and you can incorporate those, but you do understand that they live in different realms. As a metaphor, for lack of better words, I'll leave it at that. My opinion. All right, well, I'll leave it at that. So there you are. The medium is message. The global village. We shape the tools, and in turn, the tools shape us. That's those 3 quotes from Marshal McLuhan. So until next time, all right. Yeah. Until next time.